The first thing we are going to learn is how to thread the machine. Although this can seem intimidating, it doesn't have to be. After some practice, you will be able to do this easily. I recommend watching first, then watch as you try to thread your machine, pausing if you need to. After you thread it successfully, try doing it a few more times for practice. Your machine may look a little different than mine. Most machines thread in a similar path, so you should be able to follow along using your specific machine manual as your guide. The machine I am using is the EverSewn Sparrow 25. I love this machine for many reasons, and it's really great for young or new sewers. My favorite features are the speed control, so you can slow down the sewing speed. There is also a needle up and down button, so the needle will only stop in those two positions, either all the way up or all the way down. There is also a start and stop button, so I can quickly stop the machine if I need to. It's still best to use the foot pedal to sew, but this will act as a foot pedal when you need it. So the first thing we're going to do is wind a bobbin. When you sew on a sewing machine, you actually sew with two threads that interlock in the fabric. There's the thread from the spool which goes to the needle, and then there's thread down here in the bobbin. You can purchase bobbins with thread already on them, but typically they come empty. And that's so you can buy the perfect color thread for your project on a spool and wind a bobbin to match. On many machines, there are guides that we can follow to help us get set up with a bobbin. The first thing we're going to do is take our spool of thread and put it on the spool pin. So this little cap here comes off, and I'm going to put the spool of thread on here and then just put this cap, and this will just hold it in place. You don't need this to be too tight. So I have my thread coming from underneath on my spool, not on top, and I know that this is the way it should be for my machine, but if you're not sure, you should check your manual. On this machine, the dotted lines indicate the path for winding the bobbin. So I'm just going to take my thread, and you can see that this dotted line is telling me to go under this guide right here. So I'm just going to do that. And if I'm following that line right there, then I'm just going to go around, and you can see in the tension disc how it fits snugly right in there. And I'm just going to bring it right around like that. And then I'm going to pick up over here with my bobbin, and I'm going to take the end of my thread. You can see that there's a hole in the top of the bobbin, so the thread is going to go up through the middle and through that hole, and then right onto the pin there, just like that. I'm going to hold my thread up out of the way, and this, if I push that pin over, that will engage the bobbin winder. And I'm just going to go ahead and use my foot pedal. Once I have some thread on there, I can stop and trim that. See how it started to sputter and come to a stop when it was done. This here is a sensor, so it will sense when the bobbin is full. And once it's full, I'm just going to push it back over, and I can take it off of the pin and cut that thread, and we'll just put that aside while we thread the needle. So this little pin is only for winding the bobbin, so I don't need this anymore, so I'm going to take my thread off of this, and now I'm following the solid arrows on my machine. So I'm going to keep it right through this hook, and now this arrow indicates that I'm going to go right around this guide. My next arrow is here, so I'm going to go straight down this channel, and you can see this arrow here is indicating that I want to go around and come back up. And this is the take up lever. If you don't see this all the way up like that, you can just turn your hand wheel and it will pop up. And you want to go right around this from right to left. Now I'm going to go back down this channel, and if you can see, there's this big hook here. I'm going to have my thread go right around that hook, And now if you can see right here, there's a little hook on the needle bar. So I just use my finger and I guide that right behind that hook, just like that, so you can see it's behind there. And because in our classroom I'm usually sewing with children, I have this finger guard on the machine, and this does make it a little trickier to thread the needle, but I can just push that out of the way, and if you can see, it's really small, but there's a little hole at the bottom of the needle. So I'm just going to thread that. I'm going to take the end of my thread and just go from the front to the back on this. Just like that. And then just pull it right through. You can see it just went front to back, and I'm going to make sure it didn't get looped or tangled around the needle. Okay, so now we're going to take the bobbin that we wound earlier and we're going to place it in the bobbin case. So I'm going to take this little cover off the bobbin case here. You just slide that little black button and this will pop right off. And the easy way to remember which way this goes is that my bobbin should look like the letter P, P for perfect. And that's how I know which way to drop it in. So I'm going to drop that right in there. And I have these white arrows here as my guides, and I also have a little picture here with my thread in the red guide. So I'm going to use those, and I'm going to hold my bobbin so it's not spinning while I go under this hook here. And you can see my arrow is telling me to go up and around that hook there. And then my last step is to bring it here, and this is actually a cutter. So if I pull that thread, it will cut the thread. And then my very last step is I want this bobbin thread to be coming up through this hole on the needle plate before I start to sew. So in order to do that, I'm going to hold my needle thread, and I'm going to use my hand wheel on the side here, and I'm going to crank that towards the front, towards myself, so it goes all the way down and all the way up one time. And then if I kind of just tug on this needle thread, you can see under there that my bobbin thread popped right up. So now I'm just going to put my cover back on, and I'm ready to sew.